Welcome all. My name is Adam Inman, and I am the Assistant Program Manager for the Kansas Department of Agriculture's Food Safety and Lodging Program. Thank you for joining the fifth installment of our monthly food safety webinar presentations. Today's presentation is called Dealing with Pests in a Food Establishment. Here are some quick housekeeping points to start things off. All participant microphones will be muted throughout the webinar. Please submit any questions by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I encourage you to ask any questions during the presentation as they come to mind. Regulatory considerations covered today are only applicable to those operations in Kansas. Today's session will be recorded and posted online. After this session, you will receive an email with a link to the recording and resource materials. The email will also contain a link to a survey. Your ideas will be considered for future outreach, so please help us out with those by completing those surveys. Today we have two inspectors giving a presentation, as well as another inspector who will be doing some Q&A. So there'll be David, RD, and Harrison. They're part of our Southeast Kansas inspection team. We hope you learned something new today. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, my name is David Carlson. Today, my colleague RD Kiken and I will talk about pests in food establishments. RD and I are inspectors for the Food Safety and Lodging Program at the Kansas Department of Agriculture. We work in the eastern part of Kansas. You might ask, why is pest control important in food establishments? Well, the most important reason is that pests can transmit germs that cause foodborne illness, like salmonella, and otherwise contaminate food. In addition, pests can also be an economic issue. If customers see pests in an establishment, they may or may not tell you, but there's a good chance they'll tell their friends, which can hurt your business. The Kansas Department of Agriculture receives consumer complaints about pests on a regular basis. In fact, we received 377 pest complaints in 2019 and 224 in 2020. Food that has been damaged or contaminated by pests has to be discarded, which contributes to food waste. Some pests that are commonly found in food establishments include cockroaches, mice, rats, houseflies, fruit flies, grain flies, ants, and sometimes weevils and grain beetles. Let's take a closer look at the usual suspects, all of which are found in Kansas. Cockroaches that can be found in food establishments include the brown-banded cockroach, German cockroach, American cockroach, and the oriental cockroach. Cockroaches enter mainly by hitchhiking on personal belongings or in shipments of foods and dry goods. Unlike the German and brown-banded roaches, American and oriental roaches can live outside but are forced indoors by cold weather. Understanding the differences between the varieties is important to guide the pest control measures. To find these pests, look throughout your establishment for egg casings, droppings that may resemble pepper flakes, and shed skins. Pay special attention to the compressor areas of refrigerators, behind sinks and other equipment, and any dark, warm, moist areas. Sticky traps can help alert you when you have an issue. The most common rodent found in food establishments are house mice. Mice can enter establishments through gaps in doors or about any hole in a building. They can squeeze through very small holes, even holes the size of a dime. Look for chewed bags and droppings. While not as common as mice, rats can sometimes be found in food establishments in Kansas. Their droppings resemble mouse droppings, only larger. They can squeeze through holes the size of a quarter. Norway rats seem to be more common in larger cities. Pack rats, also known as wood rats, can also be found sometimes in food establishments. Their nests are an obvious sign that pack rats have moved into your establishment. Houseflies are another common pest in food establishments, especially in the warmer months. Houseflies are especially good at spreading contamination, whether it's from trash cans, restrooms, or other unsavory places. They can also end up in food, which is a sure way to upset a customer. Don't prop open exterior doors, as this is a sure way to allow flies inside. To limit contamination from the restrooms, self-closing doors are required. Keeping a facility clean, the trash dumpster area clean, and the lid closed on the dumpster can be helpful in minimizing the number of flies in the vicinity. Also, keep the grease dumpster lid closed, and the area around it clean is a good idea. Fruit flies can also transfer contamination. They like to frequent wet areas such as sink drains and mop water. You may find them in onion and potato bins. They also like empty bottles and cans. A well-sealed and clean facility can help prevent fruit flies, as well as disposing of trash regularly and not storing empty recyclable items in open containers or open trash bags. Drain flies are another common pest. They can be found around drains, leaking sewage, and in garbage cans, so they can, of course, also transfer contamination. They are also found sometimes around leaking bag-and-box soda syrups. As with other flies, a well-sealed and clean facility can help. They can also enter through sewage system drain traps. If you have a drain or a sink that's not used frequently for some reason, be sure to run water down it often to keep drain traps full of water. Ants are generally more of a problem in the warmer months. Many ant species can spread disease, and many species like moist areas. Ants are attracted to foods that are sweet, such as soda syrup and frosting. Now that we've discussed what we're up against, how do we solve the problem? Integrated Pest Management, or IPM for short, is a systematic approach to controlling pests that goes beyond just spraying or baiting. It looks holistically at reducing or eliminating the things pests need to survive, which maximizes the effectiveness of the pesticides that may be needed. It helps to eliminate the pests without creating other food safety problems. Now, RD will talk about how to apply the IPM principles in your establishment.
Thanks, David. No single action alone will work for pest control. A multi-pronged approach is what integrated pest management is all about. The following are 5 simple actions that, when combined, will lead to a robust pest control plan. Maintain a clean facility. Food debris and grease are a food source for pests. Have a cleaning schedule and stick to it. Maintaining a clean facility extends to the outside areas of the premises too, including the trash dumpster area. Keep physical facilities in good repair. Eliminate gaps on doors and holes in the building. Here, we see a potential freeway for pests to access a building through a hole in an outside wall. If you have screen windows or doors, make certain the screens are in good condition and the mesh is of a proper size. Repair roof leaks as soon as they are discovered. Keep plumbing and drains in good working order. Make sure your trash dumpster has a tight-fitting lid and that it is kept closed. Eliminate harborage conditions. Harborage, which is a term used to describe food, water, and shelter for pests, need to be eliminated for pests to be eliminated. For example, you might need to use drain covers at night to limit access to moisture for cockroaches. Unused equipment or other items in the back room of your facility can be a habitat for pests. Keep equipment and items in dry storage away from the walls. Mice like to travel along walls, and it is easier to see droppings if things are stored away from the walls. The same goes for outside of the facility in areas under your control. Do not store junk outside or have brush piles present. Keep any grass mowed short. Portable buildings or sheds outside of a facility that have exterior holes or gaps or are full of items are magnets for rodents. Inspect incoming shipments for pests. As David mentioned, pests, especially German or brown-banded cockroaches, can enter a food establishment in food boxes and food packaging. It is important to examine closely any incoming shipments for evidence of pests. For example, if you open a cardboard box and find roaches, remove the box from the facility, contact the food vendor and let them know. You can also contact KDA and have the vendor's warehouse checked. If there's a pest issue at a food warehouse, it could affect a lot of food establishments. Let your pest control service know if necessary. The types of businesses or land uses around your facility can create special challenges when dealing with pests. For example, many strip malls have drop ceilings that open across several suites. When one tenant treats for cockroaches, they all run to the food establishment next door. So, pest control needs to be coordinated for the entire unit. Another example is when a nearby field is disturbed, which causes the mice to seek shelter in your business. Pest control operators, or PCOs, can be a great value. It is a good idea to be on a regular pest control service. A reputable pest control service will know how to control pests in a food establishment. A good pest control service will not just come in once a month, spray, then leave. They will diligently look for evidence of pests and give you advice about how to prevent pest problems. Things like fixing the gap on the door, cleaning the grease behind the grill, filling the hole in the wall, or cleaning out that junk room in the back. Pest control operators are required to be licensed with KDA's pesticide and fertilizer program. So feel free to contact them if you have any questions about a PCO. If you decide to perform your own pest control or to supplement your PCO services, you need to be aware of unapproved pest control methods. Many pesticides at your local store may not be allowed for use in a food establishment. There are different standards for pesticides that are used in a food establishment. On any pesticide product, it must state clearly on the label that usage is approved for use in a food establishment. Many products are labeled for residential use only. These may not be used in a food establishment. If you use a professional pest control service, you may want to double check that the products that they use in your facility are labeled for that use. The photo shows that this product is for residential use only. It cannot be used in a food establishment. This photo shows that the product is labeled for use in a food establishment. Remember to read all the instructions carefully and follow all use directions. This product can only be applied into cracks and crevices, for example. Rodent baits have an extra requirement I'd like to mention. They must be set out in a covered, tamper-resistant bait station if they are placed in areas readily accessible to people or if placed outside. This prevents children or pets from accessing the product. I hope you found the information we covered today helpful. If you ever have any questions about food safety in your operation, please feel free to contact your inspector. We're always happy to help you operate both safely and successfully. If you don't know your inspector, contact our Manhattan office and we can connect you with our inspector in your area. You'll also find educational materials on our website to help you with all aspects of food safety. Now, I'll turn it back over to Adam for the question and answer session.
Thanks, David and RD. Really appreciate all that information. Very well presented. Now I'm going to introduce Dana Ladner. She's KDA's Compliance and Education Coordinator, and she's going to moderate our question and answer session.
Great, thanks, Adam. Wow, that was a lot of great information by RD and David. So Harrison, thanks for joining us to answer some questions that we have. And the first one that comes to mind for me after listening to that presentation is, what are the hardest pests to get rid of?
That's a wonderful question. Uh, Typically, cockroaches are one of the hardest to get rid of, especially if they become established. Flies in this time of year can become established very quickly, and it is also hard to get rid of them. The key is to minimize their food, water, and shelter at all times. So it's much more easy to control them if you can get that and before they get into the facility.
Great. At the end of the presentation that we just watched, they talked about rodent bait blocks. So if I was at an establishment and an owner there, can I use the rodent bait blocks that are individually wrapped and place them throughout my facility?
As was mentioned in the presentation, all labels must be followed completely. If they're placed in areas accessible to people or they're placed outside, they must be in tamper-resistant bait stations. We still recommend tamper-resistant bait stations for all bait placements, though.
I'm going to continue on with that thought. So can I use a rodent pellet bait that's maybe placed on a tray?
It's the same idea as before, as long as it's allowed to by its labeling. And you want to place them in some place that's not readily accessible to people, and you don't want it placed outdoors. We still recommend the tamper-resistant bait stations for these items as well.
Wow, we had some great information there on the integrated pest management. And I know that all of our licensees and those that are in the pest control business do a great job on behalf of our establishments in the state. But my question would be, how many warnings does your team give before you close a restaurant due to a pest problem?
Oh, well, there are certain levels of pests like cockroaches or rodents that we will ask the operator to voluntarily close to get the problem to a manageable level. Then they can reopen when they have eliminated the rest of the pest issue.
Great. We have a couple of questions that have come up in the Q&A, Harrison, so I'm going to throw those out there to you. The first one is, what can be used in food establishments to control gnats? Are folks able to use fly spray?
Adam, would you like to take this question?
Sure, Harrison. So as we can't hammer on this enough, but the label is the law. So those use directions are there to protect everybody's interests. I'd say working with a pest control operator to find specific products. Sometimes your food service suppliers will also have access to products that are available, that are suitable for use in food establishments. There may be some things, there's salt guns. I mean, there's some things that you can get creative with flies. Fly strips are totally fine as long as they're placed in areas like above a trash can where they're not going to fall into or drip into food or food contact surfaces. Electrocution stunning type of devices are not acceptable because those can fling bug parts across the establishment. You can also get those attractant lights that just have the UV lights, the blue lights, you may have seen them around, and those attract insects to a sticky trap. And so that's how those work. Those don't actually electrocute or stun like the old bug zappers you probably saw in your backyard when you were growing up like I did. So work with the pest control operators is the best advice. And if you have any other questions specifically, definitely reach out to your inspector, contact us here in the office, and we'll try to steer you in the right direction.
Great. Adam, I'm going to stick with you on this next question that came up in the Q&A. So what are recommendations on how to manage pests that are not stored product pests? Examples maybe lice, bed bugs, etc. with that.
That's kind of an interesting question. It kind of depends on the circumstances. If it happened to be somehow related to maybe, I don't know, employees, or if that's the concern, that we'd refer you to a pest control operator for that. For bed bugs, we typically see that there has been some transfer from different public spaces. Definitely a challenge to control those. And I would say, again, a pest control operator would be your best resource to help eliminate those pests. We're fortunate in our food establishments that those aren't directly linked to our day-to-day regulatory activities, but we'd be happy to help folks that may be struggling with an issue to connect with the right resources to address them as they impact their facilities.
Great. We have about 65 folks logged on to watch this live. And so those that are watching, please put your question in the Q&A right now. You have access to some of the experts that you might be able to ask those questions to, and we're really open to the questions that you have. We have about 9 minutes left before conclusion. We want to make sure that we give those that are logged in an opportunity to be able to ask questions with that. Adam, Harrison, while folks are thinking, what else do you have for those that are watching now, or maybe that are going to watch this a little bit later, on integrated pest management and just how important that is to Kansans and our food establishments?
Sure. I think integrated pest management is, as we tried to convey in the presentation, is so valuable to all of our operators because it helps really focus resources. It helps to control the problem in a way that's safe for all aspects of food safety as well as your customer experience. So there's a lot of resources around. K-State Extension would be a good resource to do that, to look more into IPM principles. There's some EPA guidance. If you're in a school program, there's some specific IPM and school guidance that's available that covers more than just food safety as well. So all kinds of resources. We really encourage people to look at that holistic approach. I had a thought and maybe a follow-up on the bed bugs. Of course, we do regulate lodging establishments as well. And so while we have a minute and folks are thinking of questions, I'll just mention that if there is a lodging establishment operator that, bed bugs just hitchhike. They're really good hitchhikers. And so they do show up from time to time with guests and maybe even sometimes staff. And it's really important to make sure all housekeeping staff and all the staff on the property are know what signs to look for bed bugs. And then when they're identified, to have a licensed pest control operator treat that issue, to close the rooms, to let KDA know so that we can help you work as well. And those are all legal regulatory requirements, but just good advice anyway to follow those to keep your customers happy. Also have another thought. We do get a lot of questions on tracking powder pesticides, and probably the most common one is boric acid. And there are limits in the food code about tracking powders. So boric acid can be used as a pesticide in a food establishment if it's labeled for that use and the use directions are followed. And those are typically only applying in cracks and crevices, so they can't be scattered about to use a tracking powder. Now, if your pest control operator does recommend a tracking powder, it needs to be a non-toxic one. So some folks will use a little bit of flour or something like that to help lead them to where the hiding places are. But we really encourage sticky traps and glue boards for monitoring activities. Those are just a lot more compartmentalized and a lot better. Had a question come in. I'll just go ahead and grab this one, Dana. Open sticky trays in a pantry, they are allowed, or the question was if they were allowed or if they have to be covered. And it's a good point to differentiate between a sticky trap that's got some maybe pheromone bait that's incorporated into it versus a bait pellet that's a rodenticide that's designed to be a poison for rodents. So those are two different things. So the sticky traps are fine. Just place them in areas that they're not going to contaminate food or food contact equipment or utensils, and then that'll be fine. So sometimes you'll see those sticky traps, they'll be covered. So that's just to kind of mimic the habitat of the pests that you're trying to monitor for. So that's a good question.
Adam, you want to continue on with the question that Kim submitted here, or Harrison, do you want that? Who would like that one?
I'll go ahead and grab that one too. Diatomaceous earth and food grade. So again, look at the product label. Diatomaceous earth can be very effective against bed bugs. That can be part of the toolkit that a pest control operator uses for the bed bugs in a lodging establishment. I'd have to look into the label a little bit more to see the use in a food establishment. It's not one that we come across commonly, but it could well be used for certain applications. Again, our main goal is just, even though it may not be directly toxic, we don't want to have that getting into our food or onto our food contact surfaces.
Well, great. Harrison, what thoughts do you have as we wrap up on the things that you've thought about from the presentation and answering questions? And that way we can see if any more questions come in from those that are logged on.
To me, most all of it boils down to sanitation, sanitation, sanitation. Keep it clean. Don't give them a place to live or anything to eat or drink, and your life will be so much easier.
That is very great information and just things to think through. And as Adam stated earlier, we will be sending out an email after this is done with some resources on it on integrated pest management and a survey link to give us some topics for the future. And Adam, if you are thinking on the same wavelength I am, that we're going to have some additional webinars as we go through the year.
Sure, yes. We just want to thank everyone again for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend. As Dana mentioned, we'll be posting these soon on our website, along with registration for next month's webinar, which is called Limiting the Spread of Germs, How Employees Can Make a Difference. So as was mentioned before, also please look out for the email that we'll send out with the survey link, as well as the resources that we've discussed today. And please take the time to complete that survey. Your ideas are so valuable to help us planning for the future webinars, as well as improving our presentations. So
We had a late entry here for a question. Is there any financial support for bed bug, cockroach infestations for an individual that they may work for the facility and has been a source? So it's a long question. You can kind of break that down and maybe offer an answer here.
sure, I'll take a shot at that. As I read it, if maybe an employee feels like those were hitched a ride home from work with them, then that would definitely be a civil matter that maybe you want to consult an attorney if that's an issue for it. They're definitely a problem, and there's financial burdens to addressing those issues, and so we feel for that. But yeah, maybe contact an attorney, or there might be small claims court or some other things. It's a little bit outside of what we do, but I appreciate the question.
Great. They continued on with a little more information as a student. And I know most universities have legal counsel available for their students free of cost to be able to go through and make an appointment and talk about that. And I'm sure this wouldn't be the first time that has come up. So there's probably some history already that they can give them for how to pursue that. Well, with that, hopefully we've answered everybody's questions. Adam, Harrison, Artie and David, it's been great. And we'll look forward to having something going on next month.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.